Hi, hello, and thank you for clicking. This is a two-part video series, so here's part one. If you haven't seen it, I'm really not going to review it. Let's just hop into part two and let's get into it. A young mullah named Muhammad Omar would make his way back from Pakistan to Afghanistan, where he would begin to make his way back home to the city of Kandahar, or this place. We really don't know a lot about him, to be honest. But he would make his way back to Kandahar, where he would begin to amass some supporters, mostly from religious students and religious teachers. Mullah Omar's group would one day take a political and more military stance when local children were kidnapped by the local warlords for reasons I will briefly be covering. Very briefly, they were pedophiles. Due to this, the local population would ask Mullah Omar and his supporters to attack the warlords. He would then attack the warlords with 30 men and 16 guns. It went as well as it sounded. Due to this victory, and some people thinking that Pakistan helped form the group, the rise of these students, called Talibs, or plural would be Taliban, was a quick and shocking event. While major factions were busy fighting each other, the Taliban was able to take massive swaths of land, mostly within South Afghanistan. As most of the major factions were busy fighting over Kabul, the Taliban was able to gain a lot of support due to the fact that the local population at the time supported them, as they brought stability and law to a war zone basically. The Taliban would also gain support from many people and previous jihadists like Ayman al-Zawahiri and this dude called Bin Laden. The Pakistani ISI would also be accused of helping the Taliban group up until 9/11, and some would also say after 9/11. The Taliban would then begin to creep its way towards Kabul until taking the city in 1996 after a failed attempt in 1995. Due to this, the factions that were left began to retreat up north, all rallying under the new government alliance, the Rebel Alliance. Wait, they're called the Northern Alliance? Wait, they're called the Islamic Salvation Front of Afghanistan? Northern Alliance it is. The Northern Alliance would then begin to dig in northern Afghanistan. At the same time, the Taliban would get former President Mohammad Najibullah, who was hiding in the UN building in Kabul, and his brother. They would then hang him and his brother, which was basically them saying that Afghanistan was under new leadership. This action would gain international condemnation. The Taliban would then begin to implement their own strict form of Sharia law after forming the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Because who needs original names, huh? They also banned kites, TVs, movies, and music. The Taliban would also then anger a lot of aid workers, UN workers, and also fellow neighbors. One neighbor would be Iran, where once capturing the city of Mazar-Sharif, local Taliban fighters would kill 11 Iranian diplomats. While this action was later condemned by the Taliban leadership, the damage had already been done, and the Iranian government was at one time considering to invade Afghanistan until the UN talked them out of this. As this happened, more and more people would begin to despise the Taliban rule, and there was also cases of anti-Taliban revolts and insurgencies, along with some people defecting towards Ahmad Shah Massoud, the last major leader against the Taliban. Dostam was a very effective leader, but he would have to leave the country when Dostam's second-in-command Abdul Malik was discontent with Dostam's rule, as him and his men hadn't been paid for 5 months. This didn't help Dostam when Abdul Malik's brother was killed, and Abdul Malik will blame Dostam for this murder. Abdul Malik will feel backstabbed by Dostam, causing him to backstab Dostam by making a deal with the Taliban in which he would backstab Dostam forces and defect with his own militia, handing over Dostam's capital of Mazar-Sharif. Due to the shocking backstabbing, Dostam would be forced to move out of the country for a quick minute after the fall of Shibargad. While they were victorious, Abdul Malik was then backstabbed by the Taliban as the Taliban began to implement their own rules and began to disarm the local population and his militia. Due to this backstabbing, Abdul Malik forces would then revolt against the Taliban, backstabbing them with the support of Massoud reinforcements that they previously fought. Following the ousting of Taliban forces, Abdul Malik and his forces would then execute up to 3,000 Taliban prisoners they found. Dostam would then come from left field, and he would make his way back into Afghanistan, setting up base in Shibargad, where he would then begin to win over local support and would then oust Abdul Malik. But the Taliban would come back and retake the city of Mazar-Sharif, where in return they killed prisoners of war and began to target Shiite civilians. As the 1990s began to leave and the 2000s began to see light, Ahmad Shah Massoud would then begin to go around the world trying to gain international support, as he was the last major and able leader to fight against the Taliban. Ahmad Shah Massoud would also feel that the Taliban was getting a lot of support from Pakistan. On top of that, a whole bunch of refugees would begin to make their way into Ahmad Shah Massoud's territory, mostly because Ahmad Shah Massoud was known for being more democratic leaning and being more liberal compared to other factions, especially the Taliban. Massoud would try to gain support from international aid workers to the international community. He would even go to an EU summit in Brussels where he basically told the UN And I quote, "If President Bush doesn't help us, these terrorists will damage the US and Europe very soon." Talk about direct foreshadowing.
My message to President Bush is the following. If he isn't interested in peace in Afghanistan, if he doesn't help the Afghan people to arrive at their objective of peace, then the Americans and the rest of the world will have to face the problems.
And on September 9th, 2001, Ahmed Shah Massoud would hold an interview with a news company. Massoud would die that day when the interviewers were actually Al-Qaeda suicide bombers that blew themselves up, killing themselves and Massoud. Massoud had spent most of his fighting life escaping KGB, PDPA, other warlords, and some even rumor to say Pakistani assassination attempts, just to be killed by two Al-Qaeda suicide bombers. 2 days later, 4 American passenger airliner jets would be hijacked by members of Al-Qaeda, 2 flying into the Twin Towers, 1 flying into the Pentagon, and 1 crashing on its way towards the White House. In the following days, the United States and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda would go head-to-head against each other over supremacy in Afghanistan. But that is a video for another time.